When I was younger, I always felt like life was steady and predictable. I had my routines, my home, and the things that made me feel secure. I valued that predictability until one night when my world changed in an unexpected way. It wasn't anything major. It was just a small disruption. But it marked the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself. It started with a simple sound, the clattering of a trash bin knocked over in the middle of the night. It startled me awake. I was already annoyed because this had happened before. I thought it was just the stray dogs again. But I had no idea that this would lead me to meet two people who would disrupt my quiet life in ways I hadn't imagined. I made my way to the back door, still groggy from sleep. I was irritated by the mess outside for the third time that week. I'd been woken up by the sound of trash cans being knocked over. I was tired of cleaning up someone else's problem. Why couldn't people keep their pets under control? I understood that the animals were probably hungry, but it didn't ease my frustration. I opened the gate, ready to deal with the nuisance. As I neared the overturned garbage, I saw two shadowy figures standing by the mess. My grip on the club tightened as they noticed me. "Please, sir," one of them said. "We're just hungry." "We'll clean everything up," the other said. "Don't hurt us." These weren't dogs. They were children, but they seemed wild. It was dark, so I grabbed them by their collars and dragged them into the backyard under the security lights. I picked them up to get a better look. They were scruffy and dirty. They were dressed in oversized, ragged clothes and baseball caps, and it was cold out. I saw them shivering. I asked them, "Did you two knock over my trash earlier this week?" They exchanged glances, and one of them replied, "Yeah, you always throw out something like pizza or food. We won't do it again. Just let us go. We'll clean everything up. This won't do." I grabbed their shirts tightly and led them inside. I took them straight to the bathroom, pushed them in, and shut the door. "Don't come out until I'm back." I went and got some of I gave them my wife's sweatpants, sweatshirts, clean socks, and big fluffy towels. When I returned, they had tried to open the window to escape. "You might like being dirty," I said, "but I doubt a hot shower will hurt you. There's soap and shampoo here. These are clean clothes and towels. Get undressed and get in the shower. We don't like being dirty." The larger one growled. "We just don't have a shower as nice as yours are. I bet you think we'll steal something." "Yeah, right." The kid snapped. "We're not going to steal your toilet paper. We're not thieves." "What are you, some kind of creep? You into little girls?" I was shocked. Now that I looked closer, beneath all that dirt, they were definitely girls. "I didn't realize you were girls. Just clean yourselves up and I'll get you something to eat. When you're done, come to the kitchen." I left them in the bathroom and went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and took stock. There was cold fried chicken, half a bowl of potato salad, a tray of vegetables, some sandwich pastrami and dill pickles. I split the chicken between two plates, 3 pieces each, and added a big scoop of potato salad. I put some vegetables on a plate with dip and threw a few pickles on the side. I made pastrami sandwiches for each of them, and I even added some chips. I hoped they'd like the monster cheese, mayo, and mustard on their sandwiches. I heard the bathroom door open, followed by hushed whispers outside the kitchen. A minute later, 2 of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen stepped into the room. They had long jet black hair, olive skin, and the brightest green almond-shaped eyes. They had the most amazing eyes I'd ever seen, along with high cheekbones and the cutest little noses. They looked like they were still in their early teens, maybe around 11 or 12. It was pretty funny to see them in Brianna's clothes. She's tall and they were tiny, with their sleeves and pant legs rolled up, looking a bit like tramps. I said, "Have a seat," offering them a chair. "Do you want Coca-Cola?" "Cola, or I have juice or milk." They both asked for milk. "My name's McKay North," I said as I poured the milk and placed it in front of them. "What are your names?" the older one asked. She was short for Margaret. "My name's Maggie," the older one said. "Is this enough food? Can we eat all this?" "You can have more if you want," I replied. "Sandwiches?" "I'll make something in the morning." "No, this is great, thank you." Stock said while Maggie eyed me wearily, "What do you want from us? We don't do any dirty stuff." "I'm not into little girls," I added. "I'm not into anyone under the age of consent." They didn't seem to get my humor. I didn't mind being called little girls, but they started eating like wolves. "Slow down," I told them. "The chickens aren't going anywhere. They're dead, and the potatoes were never fast. You'll hurt your stomach." This made them giggle, and they started eating more slowly. "Where do you two live?" I asked. "There's an empty house at the end of the block. We found a mattress and some blankets. but we're afraid that someone who depends on pills might move in once they know it's empty. Would you like to sleep in a warm, clean bed tonight? I offered. They looked at me suspiciously. I laughed. I have 3 extra bedrooms. Well, they're mine too, but you know what I mean. They laughed nervously. We Stokely said they couldn't pay us. They just collect cans but spend all their money on food. I clarified that I wasn't asking for money. She asked why I was being so kind to them. I replied that everyone was being nice. Mac asked why I was being so nice to them. I said, everyone does. Maggie pressed, why are you being so nice to us? I replied, I'm not trying to be cute. I told her I'm a decent guy, just ask my mom. This made them smile and I liked it. I decided I'd try to make them smile more often if I were in your shoes. I'd want someone to be kind to me. They seemed to be thinking it over. Can I have some of these chips? Stokely asked. I pushed the bag toward them, and they both reached in. While they were still eating their sandwiches, I finished mine and noticed they were still hungry, so I poured them more milk. They drank it all and cleaned their plates, even the vegetables. They must have been starving. I told them, each of you has your own bathroom. There are toothbrushes, combs, and other things like that. There are also aspirin and stomach medicine. Toothpaste and dental floss are in the first aid kits. If you need anything else, just ask. Can we lock the doors? Maggie asked. Yes, but if I knock, you have to open them within a reasonable time. Okay. If you don't trust us, we don't really trust you either. I had to laugh. Fair enough. We have mutual distrust, but you'll soon learn you can trust me. I almost never hurt beautiful girls. This brought another set of dazzling smiles. They followed me down the hallway to their rooms. I heard the locks click and smiled to myself as I returned to bed. I lay awake for a while, trying to figure out what had happened to these girls. Why were they digging through my trash? Why were they alone? Where was their family? I planned to get some answers in the morning. I was getting dressed when I heard the floorboards creaking in the hall. I cracked the door open and saw them sneaking in toward the living room. I figured they were about to leave, so I stepped out. They froze. Girls, are you ready for breakfast? I asked. They looked at each other. Maybe we should just leave, Maggie said. You're not going to lock us up or anything, are you? I asked. You mean make us stay? She replied. No, I won't force you to stay, I said. That's not how I do things, but I'd love for you to have breakfast with me. They looked at each other once more. Will you let us go? I was hoping you'd spend the day with me, I said, but if you have somewhere else to be, that's okay. Yeah, we've got to meet our stockbroker, Maggie quipped, her face lighting up like Christmas. So, what are we having for breakfast? No, what are you going to make for us? Are you an English teacher or something? Yes, I teach English literature at the university. Cool. We don't go to school, but you're having breakfast, right? I was thinking waffles and bacon sound good. They did, so we headed to the kitchen. I got out the waffle iron while I mixed the batter, and they made waffles while I fried 2 lbs of bacon. I'm kind of a syrup snob, and I'm a coffee snob too. I let Maggie turn the bacon while I ground the coffee beans. Everything came together nicely, and we had real maple syrup and waffles. They asked for coffee creamer, but I kept some. I was there with Brianna and the girls, who love vanilla. We ate all the bacon and they each had 3 waffles. I joked that in a week they'd be as fat as toads, and they laughed. It was the best sound I'd ever heard. Then they gulped down milk like hungry calves. My pantry was definitely going to need restocking, so I told them to tell me about Maggie and Stokely. I asked about Maggie and Stokely. I wanted to know what was going on with them and why they were looking through people's trash for food. We took our coffee into the living room, and they told us their sad story. Their father had been a car mechanic, but he lost his job when they were young. This led him to start drinking and abusing them. Their mother eventually divorced. He and the girls never saw him again. Detroit was going through a rough patch economically, making it tough to find work. Their mom drove a taxi to support them, but one night she picked up the wrong passenger. He stabbed her for the little money she had and left her to bleed to death. The girls were put into foster care, but the foster homeowner was abusive, so they ran away and lived on the streets for 3 months. Their last name was Steele, and they were constantly worried about freezing to death, being maltreated or eliminated, and where their next meal would come from. I sat quietly after they finished their story, feeling really sad for them. They were broke. I wondered how many other kids like them were out there living the same story. This was probably more common than I had ever realized. I wondered if they'd let me help them, and how I could even do it. It seemed unlikely that Children's Services would let them stay with me, A single man housing 2 young girls. The girls sounded like something a carnivore would dream up, and I doubted social services would allow it. "Mac, are you married?" Stokely asked. "I am," I replied, "but my ex thought I wasn't ambitious enough. She's a hotshot lawyer and has been all over. There was no room for marriage in her life." "What a witch," Maggie commented. "Actually, she's a really good person," I replied. "She didn't cheat or anything, and we're still close friends. We both agreed we should never have gotten married. We were too young and too dumb." "How old are you, Stokely?" "I'm 28, I told her. How old are you?" "I'm 11, she replied. "And she's 13. I replied, "What are you doing today?" She asked, "What are we doing today?" She corrected herself, "Yes, what you said. We're going to talk." I said, "I'll introduce you to someone." I opened the garage door and suddenly a massive fur came bounding in. He spotted our guests and leaped onto the sofa, settling on their laps. Licking them with his big pink tongue, I said, "This is Granville, I call him Grandma." The girls burst into giggles as the dog covered them with licks. At 130 lbs, they could barely move him. "Lie down," I commanded, and he reluctantly settled on their legs. Stokely laughed, stroking his head. "What kind of? This dog is striped like a tiger. He's a Heck, which stands for Bull Mastiff." I explained that's why he has that brindle color. He looks like he could bite our faces off. Maggie said yes he could, but he won't. He's gentle with my friends. He sees you here being kind, so he loves you. If you were threatening him, he'd get aggressive. He knows you and he won't let anyone be mean to you. If I yell at you, he won't like it. He protects the people he cares about. Stokely slid down and wrapped her arms around the dog's neck as he licked her hand. "I love him." She said, "He's so wrinkly and cute. Does he live in the garage?" I replied, "No, he lives in the house. He got sick yesterday, so I put him outside to avoid a mess." "What made him sick?" Stokely asked. "He eats things he shouldn't, sticks bugs, dead stuff, you name it. He seems fine now, though." "Gross," Maggie said. He licked my face. "Yeah, he's a bit disgusting, but he's my buddy. He'll be your buddy too if you let him. We should." I suggested we take him for a walk. I grabbed his leash, and Maggie wanted to lead him, but she ended up dragging him a few yards ahead of Stokely and me. Stokely slipped her small hand into mine, and I looked down at her. She smiled up at me. She was so beautiful. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied. She was holding hands with some pretty girls and she blushed a little, but she didn't let go. We walked for a couple of miles, and by the time we got back, Granville was panting and drooling. It was cold out, but he didn't seem to care. We drank more coffee and talked for the rest of the day. Eventually, I asked them if they'd let me help. "What can you do?" Maggie asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but I could talk to Brianna. She's a lawyer, though, a different kind. Maybe she'll have some ideas." "Is this the same witch?" Maggie asked. "Maggie, stop calling her that. She's not a witch." "Do you trust me?" I asked. They exchanged looks and nodded. "Yeah, I guess so," they said. "You've been really kind to us, so let's call her and see if she can come over. I think you'll like her, just give her a chance." Rihanna was busy but agreed to come over for dinner. Bree is a tall, stunning redhead, and even though she doesn't realize it, she's incredibly shy. When she walked in, I could tell. The girls were impressed. She kissed me until my toes curled, then hugged both girls. "You've replaced me," she teased, winking at them. "No, Bree, you're irreplaceable," I joked, and she beamed, clearly pleased. I explained to the girls that Bree and I were still good friends, and that we had a friends with benefits kind of relationship. We still had great sex sometimes, once a week, sometimes more. Occasionally she'd stay with me for a week and we'd have sex like rabbits, but she didn't have time for a husband, and I doubted she ever would. We loved each other, but we couldn't make marriage work as friends. We were great, but as a married couple we fought constantly. "So who are your new girlfriends?" she asked, smiling at them. I saw they were dazzled. "I'm Maggie and this is Stokely." "Nice to meet you," Bree said. "You know this guy's dangerous, right? Not just to us, but to anyone who's his enemy. He has a club and a very big dog." Bree nudged Granville with her boot, and he grumbled in his sleep, "Hey, big guy." She knelt down and hugged him. "Miss me?" He rolled his eyes but didn't have the energy to lift his head. "What's going on, Mac?" she asked. "What did you need to talk about?" "Not that I mind coming over for dinner," he said. "He's a great cook. If you can get him motivated, girls, I'm sure you'll be able to persuade him." Maggie said that she'd never seen anything like it. "Well, it sounds like I'm in for a treat, but seriously, what's the big deal?" she asked again during dinner. I explained that we needed her help. I said that we don't know anything about legal stuff, but the girls are orphans. There's a chance that their dad might be alive, but nobody knows where he is. He left them, and their mom was taken away. They ended up in foster care where someone started to mistreat them. They ran away and have been living on the streets. I found them digging through my trash, and now we're trying to figure out how to keep them from going back to that life. She looked at me for a moment and said, "You want them, don't you? Jesus, man, you've always wanted kids, and because I didn't give you any, you want them, don't you?" I blushed. "Yeah, I kinda do. What do you think, Bri? What's the best way to handle this?" "I don't think it's possible. No family court is going to allow it. Giving you 2 young girls, you're a single guy, it's a recipe for disaster. They won't allow it." I looked at the girls and saw their wide eyes on me. When I asked them, they exchanged glances and suddenly burst into tears, running up to hug me. "You wanted to keep us, Stokely," sobbed. "I can't believe it. I never thought we'd find someone, anyone," she said through her tears. I held them tight. "Yes, girls, I did think about it. You need someone to look after you, and I need someone to look after me. I thought we could figure this out together." Their small bodies trembled as they clung to me. She glanced from the girls to me, her eyes streaming with tears. "Damn it, Mac. Look what you've done to me. Just when I think I've got you figured out, you surprise me. What am I going to do with you?" She had a strange expression on her face, like she was seeing me in a new light. "Give me a few days to think." "Girl, you're coming with me, you can't. Stay here with Mac. If anyone finds out, it'll ruin everything." "Mac, we're taking Grandma too. I can't stay home without him, and you'll have to look after the girls." She quickly gathered them and the dog and left in her Mercedes. "I'll call you." She called me several times over the next 2 weeks. I tried to get hold of her 3 times in seconds, but I didn't see her or the girls. Then, on a Friday morning, she called to ask if we could meet for dinner at Alfonso's, a little Italian place in Pontiac that we used to go to when I first arrived. She was already at the bar with a few guys hanging around her. As soon as she saw me, she jumped up and left them there. We walked to our usual booth, but this time she sat next to me instead of across the table, which was unusual. We ordered and she stayed quiet for a bit. Finally she said, "You know I love you, right, Mac?" "Yes," I replied. "I love you too." "I'm not talking about loving your mom or anything like that," she said. "I'm in love with. You know, Mac, I've always loved you, ever since that day at Cedar Point. You're the only man I've ever loved or will ever love. I trust you completely. I love everything about you except the part where we were married. I need to be free. No commitments, no baggage, no ties. I love my job and my life, but I don't love them more than I love you. I love them more than I love you, and I don't have to choose. You're as faithful as Grandma. We've got an understanding. I don't sleep with anyone, but you never have. You always know that about me, which is why what I'm about to say is going to sound crazy." I joked. "Sounds like I'm in for a shock." She gave me a look. "Yes, you are. Will you marry me, Mac?" I nearly choked on my wine. Getting wine in your lungs is not ideal. Once I recovered, I just sat there stunned. My mouth opened. "Stop being an idiot and answer me." She barked. "Hell no." I finally managed to get out a reply. "Why, Bri? We make each other miserable. In a month, we'll be at each other's throats. There's nothing wrong with how things are now." She admitted that this isn't about us. It's about the sweetest, most adorable girls on the planet. "Mac, I'm completely in love with them. You wrecked my life by inviting me over that night. They're desperate to see you every night. They beg and cry to come see you, but I'm not giving in. I've never been happier than I am with them. No judge would give us custody, not to me, not to you, not to either of us alone, but if we were married, they'd give them to us in a heartbeat. So I need them, and if I need them, I need you. If you want them, you'll have to get them. To deal with me too, can we do this, Mac?" I doubt it. I told her, "You're as bad as me. You come home drunk. You're never on time for anything except work. And half the time you don't come home at all. Bree, we've been through this, I know. But what if things are different now? I can't. I'll wait to come home to them. I always call when I'm running late. Since they've been with me, I only have 1 glass of wine a night. I didn't know I could feel this way. Marry me, Mac. Give me a chance. Let's talk this over," I said. "Then what are we doing here? You think? I'm just joking around. Can I ask what's going on? Should I start?" I signaled to the waiter for more wine. "Go ahead. What drives me crazy about you is your need to control me. She said, you have to know every detail. Where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing, when I'll be home. You're paranoid. You could just stop trying to control me. We'd still be married, but you can't help it. You know you're the only man I've ever cared about. Yeah, I do. I said it used to drive me nuts. I was always worried you'd find someone else and leave me. That's never going to happen. She promised. I've never even considered another man since the day I met you. I go to dinners and dances with clients and colleagues, but that's just what I do. No one has touched me, and no one ever will. Do you believe me? Yes, and it's the same for me. I trust you, Bri. I know you'll never hurt me. I've always loved you, and I think you feel the same way. We were comfortable where we were, but I'm not comfortable anymore. Those girls need a family. I love them almost as much as I love you, more than my job. I want to be part of their lives. Part of their lives? The only way that happens is if we do this together. Will you give me a chance? Mac, will you marry me so we can be a family? I'll never have kids of my own, I'm too selfish for that. But these girls, we can take care of them. Marry me and I'll make you happier. You seem really happy now, which is great. I just wanted to give you a little time to think about this. She looked at her watch. You've got 20 minutes. She said, wait, what? I have a deadline. I said, yeah, the girls are waiting outside. They'll be here in 10 minutes. After a quick walk with Grandma, a car will pick us up and take us home. We quickly finished our food and stepped outside. There was a limo waiting, but the girls were nowhere in sight. The driver mentioned they were walking the dog, but he didn't seem too happy about it. After a few minutes, I saw the girls hurrying towards us. Let's go, Maggie said as they approached, and I saw a guy watching us. Grandma doesn't like him, she said, and he growled at him. I looked down the street and saw a young man walking our way. He looked. He was about 20 with tattoos, piercings, a knit cap, and a hoodie. His sagging pants barely stayed on. He probably thought he looked intimidating. What are you staring at? He snapped. We're just leaving. It's all yours. Nice jacket, fancy car, pretty women. Like you've got some cash. The guy was nuts. I stood about 8 inches taller than him and outweighed him by at least 100 lb. No beer belly either. You better move along, kid. I told him my dog really doesn't like you. He got about 4 trillions from us. I'm not scared of any dog, he said. How? How much cash you got on you? He asked, reaching under his jacket. I caught a glimpse of metal and kicked him square in the chest, sending him flying backward. The weapon fell out of his pants. Maggie lost her grip on Granville's leash as he lunged, but the guy managed to protect his face with his arm, but I heard the crunch as Granville broke his forearm. He screamed, and Granville shredded his sleeve. I told Granville to go down, and he did, sitting by my side. The guy was still on the ground as I knelt next to him. Granville was close by. I said, take it. He lunged forward, his jaws closing near the guy's neck. I think you're an idiot, I told him. What are you, some kind of... He nodded, fear etched on his face. Say it, I demanded. He didn't respond. Bite Grandma, I ordered. The guy whimpered as blood trickled from where Granville's teeth grazed his neck. The sound of Granville's breathing filled the air. Say it, I repeated. I'm an idiot, he whispered. How much money do you have on you? I asked. He handed over the cash, which Granville then squeezed out of his pocket. Slowly, I warned. He pulled out a wad of cash and handed it to me. Let him go. Grandma, I said. Granville released him and the guy scrambled backward. I'll give you a 20-yard head start, I told him. Then I'm sending the dog after you. Better run fast. He bolted like a sprinter, but his pants fell halfway down. He stumbled, then yanked them up with his good hand and took off. You need a belt, I called after him. I turned back to the girls who stood there with their mouths hanging open. I kicked the weapon into a storm drain. What I asked Bree was the first to speak, you said. You're one nasty son of a... Which Mac? Just a heads up, never piss off the wrong person. The girls rushed over, and I gave them a hug. Mac Stokely whispered in my ear, I thought that guy was scary, but you didn't even break a sweat. You did it for us, didn't you? Nobody messes with my girls, I told her. Even I left you a little something for your college fund. I handed her the cash and she counted it, $700. The guy must have mugged a few people recently. She split it with Maggie and we got into the limo. As I leaned back hugging Maggie, I noticed something. A van was coming for us. I said, I know, Bree replied. It's got some of our stuff. I raised an eyebrow. I take a lot for granted, she laughed. Girls, I said, Bree and I will get married again, and you'll stay with us. The girls gasped and screamed. Maggie asked, She's really not a witch, you were right, we love Bree. She's been so good to us. We have all these new clothes, and she got us into this amazing school. We'll make you both proud. I promise. We know you will. Don't worry, Bree reassured them. I was still in shock, trying to form words, but nothing came out. Mac, you okay? Stokely asked. Bree chuckled, said no. He's in full panic mode. His perfectly ordered world is about to get flipped upside down. His house is spotless, everything in perfect condition. Now he'll have underwear hanging in the shower, mixed up books, drink rings on the coffee table, and it'll drive him crazy. I don't even know how he'll react living with Granville. We'll just have to love him enough that he won't care about crumbs on the table. I think we can do that. Maggie laughed. I'm not sure how Bree started, but oh, he loves pretty things. It seems that girls can simply bat their eyelashes and men will melt. I know he'll be mad at me, but you girls will have to love us through it. Wait a minute, I groaned. I didn't exactly agree to any of this. Bree, like her usual whirlwind self, was sweeping us all along. Do you love Bree? Stokely asked me. Yes, I love her on the other side of the city. I joked, yeah, but we all need to be together. Maggie said they all burst out laughing at my remark and I had to join them. The idea was absurd. How had I lost control so quickly? As usual, Brianna had just taken over. What started as my little attempt to help the girls had snowballed into a marriage and adoption plan. It was wild how small actions could send your life spiraling out of control. I thought it was reckless and told Bree so. When we got back to my house, there was a flurry of activity. Movers. I was surprised to see piles of stuff being moved around and placed in different rooms. Lots of women's clothes started showing up in Maggie and Stokely's rooms. I couldn't believe it. I asked Maggie where all this stuff came from as she zipped past. Bree took us shopping a few times and said she'd be back later. She popped her head out of my room and said, Mac, do you ever throw anything away? You still have things from when we were married. I'm getting rid of this junk. I need drawer and closet space. I rushed over to rescue my high school Letterman jacket. I shouted, Stop throwing my stuff away. If I didn't want something, I wouldn't keep it. This is my house, and I'll throw your stuff out if you don't stop. She stuck her head out and glared at me. Bony back? She snorted. Then she grabbed my sleeve and pulled me into the bedroom, which looked like it had been through a tornado. She locked the door, pulled her dress over her head, and leaned over the bed. I was surprised to see she wasn't wearing any underwear. We ended up having sex, and the next morning I slept in until 10. After stumbling into the shower, shaving and freshening up, I finally felt somewhat human again. Bree was still asleep, her fiery red hair falling across her face as she lay on her stomach. I couldn't help but admire her bum. I wandered into the living room and found Granville fast asleep, drooling all over a pile of my best shirts. I sighed. I grabbed a glass of orange juice and called to him, Come on, Grandma, let's get out of here. He lifted his head, rolled his eyes, and groaned as he got to his feet. We headed to the backyard where he did his business, before flopping down on my legs. The sun was warm, and I felt lazy like a lizard basking in the heat. It was unusually warm for this time of year. It was a surprisingly warm day for this time of year. The door opened, and Stokely stepped out with a glass of milk and a bun. Hello, Angel, I said, waving. Hi, Mac, she replied, closing the door behind her. After a moment, she walked over to the glider where I was sitting. Is there room for me? She asked. I shifted over, and she curled up on my lap, resting her feet on there was an empty space. She sighed, took a bite of her bun and looked at me with those big green eyes. Mac, she began, crumbs were falling onto our laps. I interrupted, telling her to finish eating, drink her milk and then talk. She giggled and waited until her mouth was empty. I was almost choked. I muttered, Being reliable is better than being cool. She laughed. I didn't mean it like that. I just mean Breeze is like a force of nature. And you're like a mountain. You know, she really, really loves you. She talks about you all the time. She's told us everything about you. Do you love her? Yes, sweetie. But like you said, she's a force of nature. Loving her is like loving a thunderstorm or a wildfire. Mountains don't care about thunderstorms or wildfires. I'm more like you. I think we could be the calm at the center of their storm. She looked up at me. I want you to be our dad, Mac. I never thought we'd find someone like you and Bree too." Her voice cracked a little. "We were so scared and alone. Do you have room in your life for girls like us?" I hugged her tighter. "Stokely, there's always been a place for you and Maggie. I've wanted someone like you to love me for years. I didn't think I'd ever have this. Bree never. She never showed any interest in having kids. I think you girls turned her world upside down, just like you did mine. I've seen the way she looks at you. It's like she woke up one day and realized she loves being a mother. You've changed her. You were right about her. She admitted she's amazing. It's overwhelming sometimes. She makes a decision and you just get pulled along." I laughed. "That's always been Bree. The first time I met her, I went to an amusement park with some college friends. She decided I was going to be her. Bree and I were ride buddies. I'd actually gone on the trip because I liked another girl, but Bree dragged me away. We never saw the rest of the group. I was 20 at the time and fell in love with her that day. She's like a virus. She invades your life and takes over. We had our first fight a month after we got married." "What did you fight about?" she asked. "You're going to think this is silly, but it was about shoes. She kept moving mine and putting hers in their place. I had to dig through her stuff to find mine. She thinks I'm obsessive. She's probably right, but is it too much to ask that she keep her shoes on her side of the closet?" She got really angry and then I started driving her crazy and she drove me crazy. I like to have a plan and she's totally spontaneous. It's just who she is. I love that about her, but it also drives me nuts. She's organized, but it drives her nuts. And those differences just kept clashing. Stokely giggled. "Maggie and I fight about stuff like that too. She's always losing things and then she just decides on the spur of the moment what to do. I think we need to change a little bit. We need to go with the flow more, but they need to change too. They need to understand that we like things in their place. Do you think we can figure this out?" I don't know. I admitted to Bree that I never had a reason to try. My relationship is weird. I love her more now than when we were married, and I think she feels the same, but she's not one to talk about it. She just does things. We're closer now than we ever were when we were married. I like her better now. Then I loved her, but we were always angry. We got to a point where we didn't need to change, but I think we were too immature and selfish. Maybe you and Maggie made us realize what we were missing. The idea of being a family is exciting but also terrifying. What if we screw it up? We could lose everything. I hate that kind of risk. I know, but sometimes you have to take a chance. She said you can't get anything good without risking that it might go wrong. I hugged her, and she snuggled against me. "You're the wisest." "A year? I've never met anyone older. I'll be 12 next month." She said we'd finished the bun and headed back home. The others were still asleep, so we took Grandma for a walk. By the time we got back, the sleepyheads were up. Bree and Maggie never looked that way. They were like new, full of energy. We had seafood for dinner. The girls couldn't stop raving about the food and prices. After their showers, they were like new, full of energy. Bree took us to get our marriage license, file for adoption, and start temporary custody. We had seafood for dinner, and the girls couldn't stop raving about the food and prices. "Wow, Mac, you must make a lot of money," Maggie said. "I make about $90, I replied. "We earn enough to live comfortably, but Bree makes 10 times more." They were shocked. Bree laughed, saying it was just money. "The point is, we can treat you girls whenever you want. Honestly, Mac cooks better than most restaurants." "You cook?" Maggie asked. Bree nodded yes, but simple things anyone can follow a recipe for. "This guy is a genius in the kitchen. She's pretty good too." I added, "If only she could stay focused." Bree playfully hit me. "Make one mistake and he'll never let it go," she joked. In our first year, she burnt food so badly that not even the dog would eat it. She'd take it outside and leave it under a tree like some kind of burnt offering. Everyone laughed. Bree and I were in high spirits, snuggled up to each other, and the girls were giggling. "We've never eaten anywhere this nice," Maggie said. Bree gave her a serious look. "Maggie, say that again with confidence," she said. Maggie smiled, straightened up, and repeated herself with pride. Bree grinned. "See, we may be from Detroit, but we've got class." The girls beamed. Over time, Bree taught them everything from how to dress to how to walk, talk, and carry themselves. In just 6 months, they went from street smart to sophisticated, excelling in everything they did. Bree was excited back home. She told the girls to turn on the TV and leave it on all night. They laughed, knowing what was coming. Next, she grabbed my hand and led me to the bedroom. "We're celebrating tonight," she said with a mischievous smile. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. "The start of something incredible," she whispered. "I love you, Mac. I'll remind you of that every night and show you just how special we are tonight. We take it to a new level. Let's go," I said, feeling the heat between us with a smile. She let her fiery red hair down, which was a rare sight. Her hair fell in waves down her back, making her even more irresistible. She turned her eyes, which were gleaming, unzipped her dress and murmured. I slowly unzipped her dress, feeling the tension build as the fabric slid off her shoulders. She stood before me. She was wearing high heels and a lacy white bra, arching her back slightly, looking even more stunning than ever. Bree always exuded confidence, but tonight was different. She radiated sensuality as she dropped her bra and teased. "What are we going to do about that?" I asked, my voice full of anticipation. She moved closer. Her body, her hands were gentle as she guided me towards the bed. She knelt beside me, her hips close to mine, and undid the buttons of my shirt. She slipped it off, briefly trapping my arms before tossing it aside with skilled hands. She undid my belt and pants, pulling them down along with my socks and shoes. I lay there, fully exposed, overwhelmed by her intensity. This wasn't just. It was a very emotional moment. Bree was at her most vulnerable, and we made love. Afterwards, I felt a new depth in our connection. She looked at me, her eyes soft but full of emotion. "Mac, I love you," she said. Her voice was trembling. "I've been selfish. I never really gave myself to anyone until now. Do you want me? I'm ready to be your friend, lover, wife, and mother. To the girls, will you help me be patient with me? You'll never regret it." I kissed her deeply. "I love you more than anything. You'll need to be patient with me too. We're a team, and we can do this together. I'll do anything for you and the girls." She whispered, "I'm scared. I'll be a bad mom. I've always feared it. That's why I never wanted kids. I don't know how to be a father either." I laughed, "But I think we'll figure it out. I don't know how to be a good wife." She admitted, "We messed up before." "I know," I agreed, "but it wasn't all you, it was her." "I was immature," she said, "but I'll try to grow up." "Me too," I said, holding her close. Eventually we drifted off to sleep. The next morning, we showered together, laughing and teasing afterwards. Bree put on her pajamas, glowing with happiness. "What's going on?" I asked. "We'll have guests soon," she said with a sly smile. I shrugged, put on some clothes, and sure enough there was a knock at the door. Stokely burst in, followed by the family dog, and soon Maggie joined too. We had a playful wrestling match with the dog winning, of course. We had a bit of a wrestling match with the dog who won, of course. After a while we all headed out for breakfast. Later on, Bree announced that we had an appointment. I asked, "Suspicious?" "You'll see," she replied with a grin. We drove to the courthouse, and as we entered I started to understand. "Do you have business here?" I asked. "Yes, a very important case," she replied with a laugh. Bree knelt down and pulled a small box from her purse. "Ma, will you marry me again?" she asked. "It's forever. I never stopped loving you and I want to be your wife again." She held our old wedding rings along with her engagement ring. "Brianna, are you sure?" I asked, my heart racing. "I've never been more." "Sure," she replied. "Girls, help me out. He's so stubborn." "Yes, please, Mac." They begged. "We want to be a family. We love you and Bree. How could I resist?" About 10 minutes later we were married again. To celebrate, Bree took us to a new Greek restaurant. As I sat there looking at Bree, the girls, and our future, I felt my life unfolding in the most beautiful way. My wife and I had 2 amazing daughters who were growing up fast. It filled me with joy to see them happy. Could we make this work? Only time would tell. It took a month to get custody of the girls. Bree worked tirelessly, and when it finally happened, they were the happiest I'd ever seen them, and so were we. Bree sold her apartment and moved in with me. I was worried that we'd get on each other's nerves, but it went better than I expected. A few weeks after the wedding, Bree forgot to call us after a dinner with a client. When she came home, we were all waiting. Stokely held up the phone, and Bree immediately realized her mistake without saying a word. She burst into tears, dropping to her knees in front of us. "I was so sorry, I forgot to call. I'll do my best not to let it happen again." Her apology was a turning point. Bree rarely apologized, so this showed real growth. Stokely hugged her first, then Maggie, and finally I joined them. "It's okay, we understand." From that moment on, Bree and I made more effort to make each other happy. And the girls were great at, we had a few minor disagreements, but I've never been happier. Bree enrolled the girls in the private school where I taught, and we grew closer during our daily rides together. They shared their thoughts, dreams, and worries, which filled my life with energy. After school, they do their homework, and then we'd walk the dog before dinner, which was usually at 5. Bree would usually join us around 6. If she was running late, she'd call and we'd go out for dinner instead. When Maggie turned 16, she only wanted one thing: her driving license. She studied hard and passed her test the night before her birthday. The next day, Bree brought up a new idea in bed. "I want to buy Maggie a car." I said, "Okay, what kind?" She said, "A new Camaro convertible." I asked, "How much will that cost?" She said, Much will that cost?" I said, "Ma, does it really matter?" She said, "I'd just like to know." I said, "Do you think we're going broke?" She said, "No, I just like to know." I said, "I think it'll be about $60. She smiled and kissed me. I whistled, "That's a lot for a car." "She deserves it," Bree said softly. "I agree," I replied. We ordered the car a bright yellow Camaro with black stripes and a sleek black interior. Bree insisted on getting the big V8 engine, thinking it would hold its value better. I had some reservations, but she was probably right. When the car arrived, we parked it in the garage and waited until Maggie's birthday morning the next day, as usual. The girls grabbed their bags and followed me to the car for school. Bree was already in the garage, but I hadn't unlocked it. Stokely let us in through the doors. I said, "You're not riding with me today, Stokely." Maggie looked puzzled. I said, "You're driving, Maggie." Maggie asked, "Is Mum going to work?" I said, "No, Maggie." I pointed towards the garage. She was leaving, but what were you going to drive? Maggie looked confused, and then I pressed the garage door opener. As the door lifted, her new Camaro came into view. Her big green eyes widened in shock, and they both stood still, speechless. Suddenly, Maggie started crying, tears streaming down her face. Maggie's face was a picture. She was trembling and couldn't speak. I jumped out of the car and Bree rushed over, wrapping her arms around Maggie. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, worried. "We thought you'd be happy. This is your car. It's for your birthday." Maggie buried her face in Bree's chest and cried. Stokely gave her a hug too, and we stood there holding Maggie until she was ready to talk. Eventually she whispered, "I don't need a car. I love you both so much, and this is too much for me." Stokely and I had already talked about it. We don't need anything. We just need you. To show our love, I kissed her cheek. "We love you so much, Maggie," Bree said, her voice shaking. "We love you both more than anything in the world. Having you in our lives is a dream come true. We love giving you things because it makes us happy to see you happy. It's one of the ways we show our love." Stokely was crying too now. I gave them both a hug and let them go to have a look at the car. I said, "At least take a look." They wiped their tears and let us lead them to the garage. I opened the driver's door for Maggie and Bree opened the passenger side for Stokely. Maggie put her hands on the steering wheel. On the steering wheel, she smiled through her tears. "You look great," I told her. "Go ahead, start it up." Maggie turned the key and the V8 engine roared to life. Both girls giggled through their tears. They were getting excited. I knocked on the window and Maggie rolled it down. I gave her a quick kiss on the forehead and told her I'd see her at school. She drove out of the garage and stopped just outside the driveway. Then she suddenly ran back, threw herself into our arms and kissed us over and over. "I love you so much," she cried. "Thank you. You're the best." "My mom and dad." She ran back to the car and they drove off, the engine rumbling. I turned and saw Debris, and she was crying too. I realized I had tears running down my face as well. "Look at us," I said, laughing through my tears. "You'd think we were the ones turning 16. It was a great idea. Bree, you're amazing," I said, hugging her tightly for Stokely's 16th birthday. We did the same thing. It wasn't as emotional as Maggie's, but it was still special. The girls were growing up fast, and our family was stronger than ever. We took them on trips to Hawaii, and Biz celebrated their achievements and watched them grow into amazing young women. When Maggie graduated from high school, she was already well into her college studies. The day Stokely started college, I came home to find Bree sitting on the couch crying. I sat down beside her and wrapped my arms around her. We sat in silence for a while, just holding each other. Eventually, Bree looked up at me, her blue eyes full of tears. "Our kids are grown up," she whispered. "Mac," I replied, kissing her gently. That's what kids do, she said, cutting my face in her hands and looking deeply into my eyes. Let me have another one, Mac, she said, her voice trembling. Just you and me. I never thought I'd want this. I love you so much, and I miss them so much already. I want to do it again. It was so amazing. I know it's only 60 millions away, but I missed them. I miss them too, I said, holding her close. Maybe we should start practicing if we're serious about this baby. Bree gasped, looking up at me with wide eyes. You really mean it? You want a baby? Of course, I said, smiling. I hope it's a red. Bree, I love you with all my heart. I picked up the girl with the same hair as yours and carried her through the empty house to our bedroom. We were ready to start the next chapter of our lives. We had to kick Granville out of the room, but that didn't matter. We were building something new and beautiful. As I drifted off to sleep, my eyes landed on the picture of Maggie and Stokely on the nightstand. They didn't look like strangers anymore. They looked like family.